There's a couple interesting things that definitely hit the news wire today. One of them was Jimmy Garoppolo's comments, and I'm sure everybody's heard it by now, but I'll reiterate exactly what he said. I'm not going to play what he said. You can go find it on all over social media, but you can actually find it on this channel as well if you want to actually hear it. But he was asked about his thoughts on Trey being traded to Dallas. He said, it's a weird situation, a lot of weird situations in San Francisco, but I'm happy for him. And then the follow-up question to Jimmy Garoppolo was, how do you think they've handled the QB situation? And he responded, how do you think they've handled it? And the interviewer said, I think it's been messy. And Jimmy starts laughing and says, yeah, that's a nice way to say it. I thought that was interesting. Jimmy G is not one to normally take shots. I think that's a pretty big shot coming from him. I mean, Mr. Professional over there. So overall, when you heard this or caught wind of it, what were your thoughts on what Jimmy Garoppolo said about the 49ers and how they handled the quarterback situation?
Yeah, I mean, who's better to comment on it than Jimmy G, that had to deal with it every single year? It felt like no matter what he did, it seemed like the 49ers, when they're in news, flirting with whomever the top free agent was of the moment. And yeah, I mean, look, the perception and the way that it's played out in the media and, the circumstances around the quarterback position, first with Jimmy G, now with, Trey Lance, it's not wrong, right? Like, you can't sit here and, no matter what way you can justify maybe some of the choices and some of the moves, but it's still messy regardless of the justifications and whatnot. So, I didn't look at it and think it was that big of a shot. I think it is what it is, right? We've every single offseason, Jesse, we've had quarterback controversy. That doesn't happen to a team that isn't a little bit at least messy when it comes to the quarterback position, right? So, I thought it was fair. I don't think he was necessarily like going hard in the paint, but he was stating a pretty factual, assessment of what the 49ers QB situation has been since Shanahan and Lynch have been in charge.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's accurate, but then I think the 49ers can also end up being right. You know what I mean? I think both can be true. I think in this moment, it's definitely a lot of people are firing shots at the 49ers. A lot of media that never really had gotten involved in it. It seems like there's a big shift in how the 49ers are viewed nationally all of a sudden with the way that they've handled this situation. And I think when a team like Dallas, who is another big market team, probably maybe the biggest of big teams, comes out and trades a 4th rounder for Trey Lance, and they've had some success at the quarterback position for quite a few years themselves. It makes things interesting, and it allows people to kind of open up and take shots. But I do think it's important to remember that the 49ers can still be right in this situation. Like, were they wrong to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't think so. Were they wrong to get rid of Trey Lance? I do believe so, but that's, only time will tell. Maybe they weren't wrong. And maybe Brock Purdy ends up being here for the next 10, 12 years, maybe longer, is your franchise quarterback, and it really doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So I think time will tell if the outrage, so to speak, was worth it. And maybe it is, and maybe it's not. But in this moment, I definitely don't think Jimmy G's wrong. This is a weird situation, and it has been a weird situation for really a while. I mean, we've talked about this position specifically since 2019. I mean, well before I was making content on YouTube. I remember having these conversations going into the Super Bowl with my friend, like, hey, should we go get Tom Brady after this season? Like, that was before the Super Bowl was played. And then afterwards, it was like really a conversation. So,
Jesse, can I let you in on a little secret?
Yeah, go ahead.
If Purdy doesn't have a ball out season this year, Kirk Cousins is going to be a free agent next season.
Yeah, no, I got you.
We're going to talk about it again.
I understand. No, and I get that. I get that. I'm just saying right now, we're like, this is in this moment, for right or wrong, however you want to slice it, this is the least amount of quarterback conversation we're going to have for a complete season for a while. And that's a nice change for an organization that has been having that conversation for so long throughout every season, and it's been warranted to this point. So I don't know if they're right or wrong in this situation, but what I do know is they've cut out the noise for the most part, because nobody's clamoring for Sam Darnold, nor should they be. And Brock Purdy really does deserve this year to kind of figure out, which way is he trending? Is he continuing to trend up? Does he flatten out? Does he trend down? Where does he go? But either way, he's given the opportunity to be the guy. And I think that's really what this team has needed for a while now.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of emotions, I think, surrounding the Trey Lance situation. But like you mentioned, I think the underlying point is it's at least finally resolved for good or bad, right? Ultimately, time will tell if it was the right decision or not. But you had always meant you had said a lot, in multiple streams that we've done, is that if you truly believe Brock Purdy's the guy, then you should trade Lance. Well, for however way you feel about how Shanahan handled this, how Lynch handled this, they finally made a choice. They finally made a decision. They went all in, for better or for worse. And I think ultimately now we get to see, what that choice is, what their decision making is, and they could be judged based off of this versus the half in, half out type of situation that we've been dealing with. And ultimately, I think that's what's the most messiest about the 49ers is they tend to try to have it all. And I think that's what ends up being messy. But at least now there's no mess, right? At least now you know who QB1 is, you know who QB2 is, you know who QB3 is, and there's not like pressure that Sam Darnold is, should be QB1 or anything like that, which would have been the whole season if Trey was still on this roster.
Raymond, I'll take the blame. Listen, I get blamed for a lot of things, so just add it on, man. Add it on.